So I was drained by the end of the film because I felt like I'd been up and down this enormous roller coaster. Such a cliche. I don't want to say it, but it did feel like that. And I know from the notes the story spun from your own personal experience, and I know the story a little bit, but I was wondering for our audience if you could elucidate how your own real life experiences led to this film happening.
Sure. Elucidate. That's a great.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
That's one of my good ones.
We're going to use that now.
That's
Gotta
all
get
I've
that
got,
in
though.
today.
It goes downhill from there. The vocabulary.
It was my first job out of college, and I stumbled into this job because it was really the only thing that I could find that was full time and offered health insurance, which I needed at the time, and I didn't know what I was getting into, and I walked into the walls of this place, and it kind of smacked me in the face, and it very quickly held a mirror up to me and showed me very clearly how naive my perception of the world was up until that point, and it introduced me to things that I thought I knew about, because I had heard about the world of foster kids and foster parenting, and I've heard about abuse, and I've learned about it in college, but that living there and talking to these kids and reading their backstories was the first time that it felt so real, and I could feel, my stomach tightening while I was learning these things and experiencing them. So that's a very life-changing experience, and it came at a time in my life where I was still, it was like just after college when you're kind of going through that, like, what does the world mean? I don't even, and so it came at a very specific time in my life that has stuck with me up until now. So this movie was, in a way, a way for me to organize those thoughts, and it's in some ways kind of like a journal for me. It's a way of figuring out some of these questions and figuring out other ways to ask them.
And Brie, what drew you to the subject matter? I mean, it's very intense.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel intimidated by embodying a character who represents it's really a rich emotional arc.
Yeah. I don't know if I didn't feel intimidated. I felt very driven. I felt afraid that I wasn't going to get the opportunity to do play this part that I wanted to play. And then I felt like it was, with that responsibility, it was my job to do right by these people. So that was kind of all I was really focused on. And the script was really interesting to me because it had an incredible balance of a really good structure that would support me because it was a well-written script, but then it also kind of hinged on this other world, which was Grace's internal world. That was a really interesting and exciting opportunity. It's like the best of both worlds for an actor, to feel like you get to do something that's already really good, and then there's just this whole other world that you get to go into. That I've always been interested in the secrets of any character that I play, and so it was interesting that I felt this movie had so much of that, of the things that, more about the things that we don't reveal than the things that we do reveal.
And well, one thing that really stuck out to me was the relationship between you and John Gallagher. It felt very real to me, and I'm wondering how all three of you collaborated to make that relationship spark the way it does.
Well, you answer that.
Well, we didn't have that much time before we started shooting, and so how it kind of worked was a couple days before we started, John and I went to dinner together, and it was just kind of, in our mind, just kind of a get-to-know-you sort of thing, and I don't know, you have a meandering conversation, but before John left for dinner, there was an envelope on his doorstep that I think said don't open until you get to the restaurant, because he opened it while we were there.
Yeah.
So we got to the restaurant and he was like, I had this, this envelope on my doorstep. So we sat down at dinner and opened it, and inside it was like a little sweet note from Destin. I was like, I hope this helps. And it was a bunch of little, it was like another little envelope with a bunch of pieces of paper in it that had little conversation starters. And it was a combination of us relating to each other about our personal hopes and fears of parenting, or childhood memories and things like that. And then there was a lot of questions about creating the mythology of Grace and Mason. And it was great, because anytime, there was never a lull in conversation. Anytime you felt like there was the breath of, maybe there's another piece of paper there that I could just grab out of there. And it was great, because it kept it moving in this direction that felt really free and open, and also extremely structured. And it didn't feel like we were just like kind of on a date. It just felt like we were working, right. And in a very comfortable setting where I got to, have soup. And and by the end of it, it sparked so many other things, where things that don't necessarily, maybe they do read on camera, I don't know. I just know that they work in the end of us talking about even the income, of figuring out, how much do we make an hour? How many hours are we working? What does that mean for us and our quality of life? What kind of activities do we do, or can we do? Does money stress us out? Is that why we live together? What's it like to work and for us to work together and no one know? Mm-hmm. What was our first date like? All of those sort of things that are the fun part of being an actor, and it instantly created an entire backstory. And then I think on top of it, we had both been in relationships that had gone on for a long time, and so what that sort of comfort feels like and looks like.
The stuff about the pregnancy and everything, that like my wife actually right now, like literally in 3 minutes, she has an appointment for her ultrasound, because we're gonna find out whether we're having a boy or girl.
Congratulations!
So like I'm here right now, so my wife is very understanding.
Oh.
Wow.
We should call her.
Is she gonna keep it a secret from you now?
Well, I don't know. Well, we have 3 boys already.
Oh.
So this is like, is it a boy or a girl? Because at this point, my wife is just like,
one girl.
Just give me one.
So I'm awaiting a text from her in a few minutes. But this is the thing. It's like I've got kids already, but I could still just immediately glom on to the uncertainty and it just hit home on a very visceral level. In terms of the subject matter overall, the plight, I don't even want to say plight, but the status of the foster system is something that really doesn't get a lot of play in the media, it feels like. And in the film, the characters evince a lot of helplessness at what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Do you feel, Destin, like this film is kind of your way of dealing with maybe the helplessness you felt while you were working there, and this is a way of a catharsis?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. There's definitely a lot of frustration that happens, I think, in any system that sets up, rules, and which are very necessary, I think, to a certain extent. But any system where your job is to care for other human beings, but there are rules set up and administration set up and paperwork and things that sometimes work and sometimes don't work so well. So yeah, there's definitely moments in this, some very obvious moments in this movie that are acting out fantasies that some of us have talked about. And when things get so frustrating that it is very easy to fantasize about taking things in your own hands and just doing something to what you think in that moment is going to help a kid. It's not necessarily the best thing to do. But I think in general, what I hope that this movie does is I hope it allows people to have just one more excuse to talk about this subject more and to talk about the system, and which has some incredibly beautiful parts to it and has a lot of parts to it that can definitely improve. And I hope that this movie allows other people who know so much more about this subject and are experts in this subject and are already fighting for certain things and certain changes, and I hope it allows them to have one more reason to talk about it.
Right. And Brie, last question. They're doing a sequel to 21 Jump Street. Are you part of that? Oh,
no.
Disappointed to hear that.
Well, they can't infiltrate the same school twice. You know, it just doesn't go that way.
That's true. Very true.
I don't live on 22 Jump Street.
Will you be back on Community?
I don't know. That's not my. I don't know.
I hope
no
that
idea.
happens,
I hope so. I hope so. I loved being there. It was like that was the first thing I did after short term, and it was so nice. I felt like
It's
was
a big
like
switch.
Well, it's like the difference between like hosting a dinner and getting to be a guest at a family's dinner.
Oh, nice.
You know,
Awesome.
it was nice.